So without any further ado, I will introduce Patrick Lozeau, and he is the Innovation and Open Data Advisor with Montreal Urban Innovation Lab, City of Montreal. So the lab is in charge of applying the open data policy inside the city, and Patrick is going to talk to us about the smart cities work that is being done in the city, and we're looking forward to that. And there will be, as part of his presentation, an opportunity for you folks to ask questions of him. So Patrick, we welcome you to speak.
So, how everybody's doing this morning? Right? Everybody slept well? Everybody took a good view of the Niagara Falls? Everything's fine? So I'm in charge of getting you woken up, feeling all energized for the rest of the day. So I hope you had not in need of more coffee after my presentation. Also, like Mary was mentioning, I'm really looking forward to having questions on what I'm going to be talking about this morning. I'm looking to have a discussion also during the day. My shadow's leaving at 4:30, so feel free to come and talk to me during the day if you have questions or thoughts around what we're doing right now. Data comments in the Montreal Smart City. I'll get a little bit further into the presentation, but first, let's go with who we are. Like Mary mentioned, I'm a innovation and open data advisor for the City of Montreal, but I'm not alone. My colleague Véronique is sitting right here in front. So we're two of us that are working full-time on open data. The open data team is not just both of us. There is people in IT also that do a lot of work behind the scenes to making sure that the data goes out. The open data program in Montreal has been running since 2011. It's only been since 2015 that it was moved to the Smart City office. Maybe some of you know Stéphane Guidouin. He used to be our team lead for open data. He's now the acting director for the Montreal Urban Innovation Lab. So he still puts his nose in open data time to time, but he's mostly left me and Véronique in charge of everything. So we're still going with the initial plan. Our open by default policy is still in the stated rule in Montreal. But like mentioned yesterday, we're also looking at new ways of pushing open data forward. The opening with purpose is there, but I was also in Buenos Aires for the International Open Data Conference. And people from the Open Data Charter are starting to talk about open by design. So having like open in the system from the start, not just at the end as a way of extracting the data. So that's also a thing that we're looking at. That's Open Data Portal. We're currently working to bring it up to more of I would say, a 2018 looking website. We're working also with Denis Quebec. So I don't know where is Christian and Steve right behind over there. So congrats on the prize yesterday. We're happy to have them managing the provincial portal and working with other cities. We're holding hackathons every year. We had it in Montreal in May. The next one is in Quebec City in March. So if you're planning vacations, skiing or seeing the Quebec City, there's also an event on open data. So feel free to maybe combine both of them and come and visit us. And we're also currently working on Open Data Action Plan. We're working with Open North on a way to move forward with a new open data action plan to see what should be the actions going forward for us. But let's put this a bit more in context. So we used to be the Smart City Office. So from 2014, 2018, we were called the Smart City Office. We had a Smart City Action Plan, and all of that came to an end in May. In May, we became the Urban Innovation Lab. This is the team which I'm part of. So the Urban Innovation Lab, we've moved from being like the Smart City Office, where most of the way of solving issues was around technology, and more of a team that sort of like helps doing partnership with different organizations inside of the city and outside of the city. We did a bunch of interviews with people that work with the Smart City Office, and most of them were telling us that the biggest thing that you brought for us in the last 4 years is that you were always able to bring everybody around the table. If it was an outside organization or even inside of the City of Montreal, bringing different departments together and talking on different subjects was one of the main accomplishments that you've done. So that's where sort of our model going forward, to bring the Urban Innovation Lab in it's a new process. But funny thing is that we announced that we're becoming the Urban Innovation Lab on May 31st, but on June 1st, 2018, we were chosen as a finalist for the Smart City Challenge. So we're not the Smart City Office anymore, but we're still in charge of the Smart City Challenge candidacy for the City of Montreal. For those that are not aware of the Smart City Challenge, it was announced in November 2017. The Smart City Challenge is conducted by Infrastructure Canada. It was put on the Impact Canada Challenge website, so it's a sort of new innovation way of funding a program. So instead of simply like putting a bunch of criteria to give financing on a program, it's building a challenge with different levels of financing. So right now, the City of Montreal is one of the 5 finalists, the 5 cities who are finalists for the $50 million prize. The other cities are Quebec City, Waterloo, Edmonton, and Vancouver, Surrey, who are joined together for for a candidacy on their side. So I'll sort of like bring you towards what we were doing in this process and how that we're going forward with the open data and also the data commons that we're trying to create for our candidacy that we're be depositing on March 5th. So we started with an analysis of what we had done for the last couple of years as the Smart City Office. Because the Smart City Office had a lot of consultation with the citizens, talking about issues and stuff like that. So out of those analyses, the subjects that were always coming up were local services, food security, housing, mobility, social and professional integration of newcomers and ethnocultural minorities, urban safety, sustainable development, environment. So those were the common issues that were coming up inside of Montreal when we were talking to citizens. So that was sort of like the base of the reflection of what would we be asking, we put in our candidacy for the challenge. And afterwards, we went towards more of a consultation with the citizens based on those subjects. So we put out a survey. The survey was available online, but we also went into the metro stations talking to citizens directly face-to-face and asking them the questions of what are the priorities for them, what they would like for them, what we need to improve in Montreal to be really a smart community. So the picture you're seeing here is a picture of a co-creation that we did with the day of co-creation, where we gathered, because during the survey process, we were also asking people to submit projects that could be included in the candidacy of Montreal. Instead of putting a single project in front, What we did is that we asked the citizens, asked project managers, companies to submit an idea of what Montreal should be doing forward as a smart city, and we gathered around 235 projects. Out of those projects, there was around 80 that were brought together on a single day. And the co-creation, the idea was that between themselves, between the different project owners, how could we do a single candidacy for Montreal? So after that day of co-creation, we came down to doing a single statement for us, for the City of Montreal. So in April 2018, we submitted this proposal. This is the Montreal community is shaping an efficient and dynamic neighborhood life by innovating mobility and access to food. It's through a co-creation and citizen participation process. The accessibility of services and the well-being of Montrealers are increasingly significantly. So it was a way for us of saying that we know that right now Montreal is a great city, but how can we put it a little bit higher? What we need to do to fix certain issues. And we came up with a picture to represent this. So, sorry it's in French, I didn't have time to translate everything, but the representation is of a house, and we have different parts to the house. So when you look at the structure, the roof is the final objective, having an efficient and dynamic neighborhood life for all to be built on a solid frame. The frame is the means of mobility and access to food, including the most visible and concrete actions. So it's sort of like two pillars, that's mobility and access to food. So instead of having a process where we're trying to improve mobility as simply as you be going to office a lot easier or faster, it's simply having a thought that mobility should be also to help people have access to food, have access to services in their neighborhood. And finally, the part where I'm going to be talking for the next 15 minutes is the foundation. The foundation is the strategies are the concepts around data and governance and the commons. So this is the part where you're probably more interested, and it's also the part that me and Veronique are working on in the team for the candidacy. So what we submitted in the initial candidacy and we'll be working on for the last couple of months is having data hubs. So instead of working with just a second. Instead of working with open data, because we were mentioning open data in our initial proposal, we decided to go with an idea of building data hubs around different subjects. So for now, we have a social data hub and we have a mobility data hub. The hubs are a way of finding answers with data to the different issues. The data hubs are, for now, as a conceptual way of seeing things, that we have a bunch of data out there. It's data that's inside of the City of Montreal. It's data that could be owned by private companies. It could be also data that university people have. So there's a lot of data that's available, but the biggest challenge right now is to find who has the best data to answer the questions and bringing them together to have a better answer and a better view to fix the issues is the way to go forward. So there's a big question mark in the middle of everything here, because sometimes having a repository or a database of combined data for one of the hubs could be the answer, but maybe it's simply having a catalog of data to help find and combine those data sets. And finally, when we're putting those data together, what we're trying to do is actually have maybe new data sets, maybe some APIs, maybe a dashboard, maybe some data viz of what we're seeing. So there's right now not a one single answer for each data hub. Maybe there's many ways of using the data for the different hubs. But the idea behind all of this is that we're trying to build mostly what I'm calling this morning is the commons. We're trying to build something where the multi-stakeholders that are putting data in the hubs are also getting value out of it. And it's also helping the candidacy of Montreal to build a more sustainable community. So for me, the best example of a commons, it's in the US. The National Cancer Institute built a project called the Genomic Data Commons that provides cancer research community with a unified repository of data, and it enables data sharing across cancer genomic studies and supportive medicine. So it's a way of saying that me alone, I won't be able to answer all of the questions, but by combining our work, we'll be able to have a better answer at the end. But maybe do a parenthesis here. Prior to being working on open data, I used to be a librarian. I did my studies in librarianship. And for me, what we're doing right these days is mostly building a library. The way I've always viewed open data is a way of accessing knowledge, giving access to citizens to the knowledge that the city already had. So for me, when we're talking about how we'll be managing the hubs and how we will be going forward with the commons of data, is that we have to think about the library. The library already has a concept of managing access. There's also another concept of managing collections. So if you're more familiar with the public library, the collections in the public library are mostly having collection for the kids and a collection for the adults. And when you reach a certain age, you're allowed to go in the adult part. When you were at the university, there were collections that were built around the programs that the university offers. And you probably never noticed, but sometimes the university will limit access between departments to different libraries, meaning that if you're in the medicine library, you won't have maybe as much of an access to different books in another library. So for me, it's sort of an inspiration of how we're going forward with these data hubs. We'll have maybe like multiple data hubs going forward, and we need to find a way to give access to the different collections of data and the different ways that the data is being given and accessed. But the library view is good, but maybe it's more like an ecosystem instead. So when you're looking maybe of an ecosystem of data, you're having a way of help managing a sustainable environment of the data. For me, there's a sort of an optimistic view of it, or you're sort of saying that it already exists and it works on its own, but there's also a pessimistic view where you're sort of saying that there's imbalances in the ecosystem and we need to find ways to sort of manage it and maybe help certain issues be resolved and not simply waiting for things to fix them on themselves. We're all here talking about open data. We're obviously all agree that data needs to be open, but some cases, the market makes it that some data is only available when you pay for it. So how do we balance that out when we're trying to resolve issues in our community? And I don't know if you've noticed, but there's also a wolf in my ecosystem. I was looking up pictures of ecosystem and I fell on this one. I'm so like, this is good because for me, the wolf is actually the issues. All of the issues that we're looking and that we have to resolve are not resolved right now. Like I was mentioning, our candidacy is due on March 5th, 2019. So between today and 2019, we need to, I would say, mostly answer the questions where the issues we have, or we also need to say to the judges that how are we going to fix these issues. Technology is the easy part. We can simply choose a technology, but making sure that the technology is going to be used to share the data, that's another issue. Governance, who has access to the data? If we're building hubs, is it only the people that submit data that get access to the data? Or are we finding a way also to share it out large with other data hubs, other users of data? Same thing for licensing. Are we going to be able to have an open license where people can reuse and have a better use of the data? Or are we going to have to restrict the data? Privacy. As the moment that you bring two data sets together and that you have not maybe checked how the data was created, there's always an issue that maybe you're going to have privacy issues. On that part, I really like what Seattle is doing right now, where Seattle evaluates the open data sets that are going out in a chart where they're saying that if we open this data set, the value of it cross-reference with possibility of having privacy issues, and they sort of balance them out. Like if the data set is not worth being published because there's so many issues with privacy, then they don't publish them. So for us, more and more data being gathered at the same place brings issue forwards around privacy. We need to make it sustainable. It's nice to build a database on one day, but you need the data to be refreshed mostly of the time. You want it to be used in the coming years, not one time and afterwards going in a closet. Same thing for the values. We're part of the open data team. The open data team wants people to have access to data, so we don't want build hubs where it's only like a small group that has access to data. So we need to figure out ways to make sure that going forward, those hubs will be offering data to the community and making it replicable. Part of what Infrastructure Canada wants is that the winning city will be offering a solution for issues in the community, but we also want that community to show it as an example for other communities to reuse the project. So we need to find a way that the hubs, the data commons that we're sharing, will be able to be reused by other cities as an example or as a concept of going forward. So next steps. Right now, we're working with partners on the proposed hub projects. So Véronique is working on the mobility one. I'm working on the social data one. We're obviously talking every day on finding ways to make sure that we're not building silos next one to each other. We're trying to make sure that we'll be able to share and have a common solution. Finding the answers to the issues I just mentioned. We need to submit the proposal by March 5th, 2019. And we keep on working on giving access to open data in Montreal, obviously. The website is there, Making Montreal is the website that we're currently using to engage citizens and project owners in Montreal. So feel free to go look it up. You'll have the document that we submitted in April for our candidacy. So the final document that's going to be submitted in next March will probably also be going up on that website. So, like I'm mentioning, we're really convinced that what we're doing is a way of going forward, is working with the community, building a project. It's not simply coming down from one company. It's a project where the community works together to find solutions. And we're really hoping that by the end, the judges will decide that our project was the best one to be used and reused also for other cities. So thank you very much, and I'm really looking forward to questions, so I hope that somebody has one, at least one, please. Thank you.
If you have a question for Patrick, here we go.
I'm interested in your engagement process at the beginning.
Yeah.
How did you identify who should come to those co-creation sessions? Tell us more about the process and what worked well, what didn't.
Because The first candidacy part was mostly done by the big team at the Urban Innovation Lab, so I was not part of it. But my understanding was that what the citizens were asking, were answering in the survey were sort of like the priorities around mobility and access to food and building a sustainable community were like the main criterias. And after looking at the projects, we were looking at projects that were answering those issues. So I would say there was a lot of different people in the room. So there was like citizens project, yeah, like person that simply had proposed something out of their hat, but there was also companies like big telcos were in the room also talking with those projects and saying how they could sort of like influence or help this project going forward. So we always keep in mind that the citizens were the ones that know best, and we try to choose a project depending on what was proposed.
Thank you very much, Patrick, for the very fascinating presentation. I'm interested in some of the issues that you identify, especially governance. I love your ecosystem metaphor and the wolf right there in the ecosystem. And when you talk about governance, what are the challenges that you're encountering and how are you managing to navigate them?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Governance, what are the challenges of governance in your project?
The challenges of governance, sorry, okay. It's a big issue for us because we're trying to build something that's innovative. We don't want to simply replicate projects from the past. We hired a project manager simply to guide us towards March 5th. And he brought up a solution of building a nonprofit to manage certain issues. And for me, I'm looking at the other side of the lake here, and there's a nonprofit managing a project of a smart city. And to me, it doesn't seem like the right way to do it because we want citizens to be able to have an input and also keep on doing the same way that they're able to do in a democracy. So for now, I don't have the answer, but we would like to have a model where the governance is shared between elected officials and citizens and also project managers, that we're looking towards having a common goals and common solution. So maybe I'll be able to answer it after March 5th, but for now, we're still in the building process of finding the best way to do it.
Hi. Thanks for the presentation. I'm curious, what are some of the examples of the projects that people have proposed, ones that are memorable, ones that you think are really interesting?
So, for example, on the mobility hub, there was already a project that was proposed to have like different organizations that have access to data around mobility, so the taxi companies, the transportation, stuff like that. So they're currently working as a mobility as a service concept, integrating the information to be able to have a better offer to citizens. So that's an example. But on the other side, for the access to food, we're currently working with with the partners to finding ways of sharing, because right now there's always issues like, okay, we have these producers that have excess food and we have these community kitchens that don't have access to food. So how do we find ways to bring them together to answer both? They're different part of the problem. So we're working to building a kind of maybe a hub of data and food, sorry, talking with my hands, to answer those questions. So there's an example of projects, but there's many of them. There's university professors that would like to build more dashboards to have a better view of what the issues going on, stuff like that. So I don't think we've put most on the website, but if you want, I could show you maybe a list of what I've been working on lately. So with whom actually? I think there's a question over here.
So it's a follow-up question to the one that Charles asked on governance, right? So if I'm listening, that will be creating what we're now hearing as a data trust model?
A little bit, yeah.
Okay. So if that's the case, who is it, that governance group that will be determining the access to the data that you're storing in the commons?
That's one of the questions we're trying to answer.
Okay.
So for now, I see the proposal for data trust. I'm seeing proposals where there's like a single owner that manages for years the access. For now, there's not a single answer to everything. That's why I'm seeing data hubs as part of an ecosystem where maybe different hubs could have different ways of governing and managing the data, but between them, they would have an understanding of sharing them to have better answers to them together.
Okay, and the last part. So, and I think the answer is you're working on this. That's where all your sensor data is going to go as well, into that data commons, data hub, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and the same governance will apply to that data.
That's what we're trying to figure out.
Okay.
So I think that's why, because when you're talking about data hubs and having like maybe repository catalogs, it's easy to say like this organization has this catalog and manages the way to access it. But when you're talking more of an ecosystem part, how do you find a way to have the common values? How do you find a way to make sure that between themselves they have an understanding of sharing and not simply saying that, okay, I have the data now I'm going to charge you for it. So, thanks.
We've got one final question.
Good morning. I'm just wondering, how did you choose to take the hub approach? Est-ce qu'il y avait des autres approches que vous avez considérées? And how did you, for both of the issues, why do you think the data hub is the best way of going about things?
I'm calling data hubs mostly like a big concept to include repository catalogs, dashboards, and stuff like that. So it's sort of just a way of saying that for me, a hub is a way of gathering data together. Maybe some data sets won't be able to be joined into a data hub. Maybe we'll want to have data sets that are outside of a hub. But I would say it's still a work in process, and we'll look forward to maybe finding other ways of putting data together. Maybe it's by having simply an API on the side and not having a hub. There's not a one answer to everything. So. Well, thank you very much.